Om Namah Shivaya. The eternal sage who lit the lamp of Advaita. A story of legend, philosophy legacy. The great story. In the lush, green heart of Kerala, nestled beside the banks of the sacred Periyar river, lay a small village called Kaladi. In the 8th century CE, in this tranquil corner of India, there lived an aged and devout Brahmin couple, Shivaguru and Ayamba. For years, they had prayed with deep devotion for a child, offering their lives in service and piety. The gods, moved by their sincerity, answered their prayers. The child born to them was named Shankara, meaning giver of prosperity. From his very first moments, there seemed to be something extraordinary about him. He was not simply a child, he was a vessel of light destined to illuminate the ancient wisdom of India, to reweave the threads of a fragmented tradition, and to offer humanity a philosophy that would endure for centuries. His father, Shivaguru, died while Shankara was still very young, leaving his mother Ayamba to raise this remarkable boy alone. Shankara's sacred thread ceremony, the Upanyanam, which marked a boy's initiation into formal learning, had to be delayed because of his father's death. Yet, with quiet courage, his mother performed it herself, refusing to let grief stop her son's destiny. The child who would shake the very foundations of Indian thought grew up in humble devotion, by the banks of a river, raised by a widowed mother's love. From the legend of Shankara, the crocodile and the sannyasin. From childhood, Shankara felt an irresistible pull toward the life of a sannyasin, a wandering monk who renounces the world in search of ultimate truth. But his devoted mother refused. For her, this child was her world, her joy, the last thread to her husband. How could she let him go? The moment of destiny arrived at the river. One day, as young Shankara bathed in the waters with his mother, a crocodile seized his leg. There was panic, terror, helplessness. The boy, calm even in the jaws of death, called out to his mother with a strange request, not for help, not for rescue, but for permission. "Mother," he said, "grant me the permission to become a sannyasin, or the crocodile shall take me." Ayamba, facing an impossible choice between a mother's love and a mother's wisdom, finally said yes. In that very moment, the crocodile released him. Shankara emerged from the water, alive, transformed, and free. He had, at that moment, taken his first step into the life of renunciation. The legend says he was just 8 years old. He made his way to a sacred sanctuary on the banks of the Narmada river, where he became the disciple of Govinda Bhagavatpada, a great sage who had himself been taught by the legendary Gaudapada. Under this master, young Shankara studied the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, and the Gaudapadiya Karika with extraordinary dedication. He was not merely learning words, he was absorbing a living tradition, and within it, discovering his life's mission. The philosophy that changed India. What did Shankara teach that was so revolutionary? At the heart of his philosophy was one daring, beautiful, radical idea: Advaita, not two. The universe is not divided. You are not separate from the cosmos. The individual soul, the Atman, is not different from the ultimate reality, Brahman. The perceived division between you and the world, between self and God, between suffering and liberation, is Maya, illusion. Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya, Jivo Brahmavana Apar. Brahman is the ultimate reality, the world is an illusion, and the individual soul is none other than Brahman. This teaching was not just philosophy, it was liberation itself. By knowing the truth of one's own nature, that at the deepest level, one is Brahman, the infinite, the eternal, the pure consciousness, the knot of suffering is cut, and moksha liberation is attained right here, right now, in this very life. Shankara pointed to the Mahavakyas, the great sentences of the Upanishads, as the direct vehicles of this liberating knowledge. Tatti Vam Asi, that thou art, Chandogya Upanishad. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness is Brahman, Aitreya Upanishad. I am Atma Brahma, this Atman is Brahman, Mandukya Upanishad. Shankara taught that the moment one truly hears these sentences from a realized teacher, right knowledge arises at the moment of hearing. This was radical. He did not insist on years of ritual or elaborate meditation programs. He insisted on the clarity of knowing. The great Digvijay, a conquest of wisdom. Legend presents us with the most vivid image of Shankara, the wandering monk philosopher striding across the vast Indian subcontinent, from the tropical coasts of Kerala to the icy heights of the Himalayas, from the deserts of Gujarat to the temples of Bengal, engaging in public philosophical debates with the greatest scholars of his age. This journey was called the Digvijay, the conquest of the four quarters. But it was not a conquest of armies. It was a conquest of minds. Shankara walked into the arenas of thought, the Shastrartha, the great public debates, and stood before Mimamsa scholars, Buddhists, Jains, Vaishnavas, and Charvakas, arguing for the truth of Advaita Vedanta with the precision of a philosopher and the passion of a saint. Among the most celebrated stories is his encounter with Mandana Mishra, a great scholar and householder who followed the Mimamsa tradition. The debate between them is said to have lasted for days, with Mandana Mishra's learned wife, Ugya Bharti, serving as the judge. When Shankara finally won, Mandana Mishra, in the greatest intellectual surrender in Indian history, became his disciple, taking the monastic name Sureshwara. Along the way, Shankara gathered around him a circle of extraordinary disciples. Padmapadacharya, originally Sanandana, who crossed the Ganga walking on lotus flowers, Totakacharya, devoted Giri who received wisdom through Shankara's grace, Malaka, a boy of apparent simplicity who revealed himself as a profound knower of Advaita, and Sureshwar, the converted Mandana Mishra himself. The four mathas, lighthouses of wisdom. Shankara understood that philosophy without institution cannot survive. A flame must have a lamp. And so, according to tradition, he established four great monasteries, mathas, at the four cardinal points of India, turning the entire subcontinent into a sacred geography of Advaita Vedanta. In the north, at Badrinath in the Himalayas, he established the Jyotirmit, the monastery of light, associated with the Atharva Veda, entrusted to his disciple Totakacharya. In the south, at Sringeri in Karnataka on the banks of the Tunga river, he established the Sringeri Sharada Peetham, associated with the Yajur Veda, entrusted to Sureshwar. In the east, at Puri in Odisha, he established the Govardhan Math, associated with the Rig Veda, entrusted to Padmapadacharya. In the west, at Dwarka in Gujarat, he established the Dwarka Sharada Math, associated with the Samaveda, entrusted to Astamalka. Each math was assigned one of the four great Mahavakyas, so that the unity of Brahman could be proclaimed from every corner of the land. These institutions became living rivers of the Vedic tradition, flowing through centuries, carrying Shankara's light to this day, unifier of a fragmented faith. The India of Shankara's time was a land of fierce religious competition. Shaivas worshipped Shiva and considered Vaishnavas misguided. Vaishnavas devoted themselves to Vishnu and dismissed the Shaivas. Shaktas revered the goddess. Ganapatyas honored Ganesha. Suryas worshipped the sun. These groups not only disagreed, they often showed open contempt for each other. Shankara did something both philosophically elegant and practically brilliant. He introduced the Panchayatna Puja, the simultaneous worship of five deities, Shiva, Vishnu, Devi, Surya, and Ganesha. The message was clear and profound. All these deities, he taught, are but different forms of the one infinite Brahman. To worship any one of them with devotion is to approach the same ultimate truth from different angles. The division was not in the divine, it was in the limited human mind. He also organized the Dashanami Sampraday, the 10-name monastic tradition, giving structure and dignity to the ancient sannyasa tradition. All wandering monks across India, regardless of where they came from, were given a home within one of these 10 orders, each connected to one of the four mathas. The legacy of words, Shankara's writings. In a life that the tradition places at just 32 years, though scholarly dates vary, Shankara left behind a body of work that astonishes even the modern reader. His most authentic and celebrated works include his Brahmasutra Bhashya, the commentary on the Brahma Sutras, which remains the oldest surviving commentary on this foundational text of Vedanta. He wrote detailed commentaries on 10 principal Upanishads, including the Brihadaranyaka, Chandogya, Taittiriya, Kena, Isha, Katha, Mundaka, Mandukya, Prashna, and Aitreya Upanishads. He wrote a luminous commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and his own original philosophical masterpiece, the Upadhisasahasri, the Thousand Teachings, remains a monument of Indian thought. But Shankara was not only a dry philosopher, he was also a poet of the soul. His devotional hymns, the Bhaja Govindam Wake Up, Seek Govinda, the Atma Shatkam Song of the Self, the Saundarya Lahari Wave of Beauty, and the Shivanand Lahari, are sung in temples and homes across India to this day, combining philosophical depth with lyrical beauty that can move the heart to tears. I am consciousness, I am bliss, I am Shiva, I am Shiva. Without fear, without death, without discrimination, without caste, neither father nor mother, never born I am. Adi Shankara, Nirvana Shatkam. Into the Himalayas, the final walk. According to the hagiographies, Adi Shankara's final journey led him to Kedarnath, the ancient Shiva temple high in the Himalayas of Uttarakhand. He was last seen by his disciples walking behind the Kedarnath temple, moving deeper into the snow, into the mountains, into the eternal silence. He did not die. He walked away, into the Himalayas, until he could no longer be traced. Some traditions say he attained Siddhi, liberation of the body, at Kanchipuram. Some say at Kedarnath, but all agree, he did not simply end. He dissolved. Like a wave returning to the ocean, it never left. Today, behind the Kedarnath temple, a 12-foot statue of Adi Sankaracharya, made of chlorite schist, weighing 35 tons, stands as a silent sentinel over the Himalayas. And at Omkareshwar in Madhya Pradesh, a 108-foot statue of oneness depicts him as a child of 12, commemorating his visit to that sacred spot.
It's dawn in this South Indian temple town, a brief, still moment of cool. Walking in the half-light, sleepy, I'm startled by something coiled on the veranda. A snake, and from the looks of it, sleepy too. Best wait for it to move off on its own. As the light rises, I look again and I laugh. What snake? It's merely a coiled rope left behind by a man who's been fixing the tiled roof. This little bit of self-deception, mistaking a rope for a snake, isn't just an occasional practical occurrence in Indian life. It's among the most well-known, hackneyed, popular examples in Indian philosophical thought. Its purpose is to show that while the sensory, empirical world is real, our minds are tricksters. What we see is sometimes not what we think it to be. Conversely, the reality we sense, superimposing a snake on a rope, exists only so far as we believe it.
Hindu philosophy is pervaded by mistakings, by metaphors of concealment and obscuration. They serve as examples of Maya, a reality that's substantially there, but whose true nature eludes us because of the limitations of our consciousness. If we can push aside this slippery and illusory reality, though, we can find something pure and constant, the world of universal spirit, Brahman. This belief in Maya, which hides Brahman, is at the core of what many today see as the philosophy of Hinduism. And we owe that definition of Hinduism to a philosopher and religious teacher who lived in the 8th century, Adi Sankaracharya.
All this universe being other than the self is unreal. For the self alone is all-inclusive and is self-established and self-dependent.
Sankaracharya established his first Hindu monastery or mutt at Sringeri, now a pilgrimage town in Karnataka, southwest India. To get to Sringeri, you have to take narrow hill roads that wind up through the hills of northern Karnataka, past miles and miles of coffee plantation, tall palms and splays of bamboo. It's a little hill town, the mutt and temple separated by a river set amidst meadows. Sankaracharya, or Shankara as he was also known, transformed existing Hindu beliefs and practices. And in many ways, it's he who made the faith what it is today, the third largest religion in the world. While there's some dispute about dates, it's generally reckoned that Shankara was born in the 8th century in the Malabar region of southern India, today's Kerala state. In Europe, this was the era of Charlemagne pursuing a bloody expansion of Christendom in his campaigns against the Saxons, Saracens, Moors and Slavs, and gaining for himself Rome's Christian imperium. Shankara's campaign, to a certain extent Hindu beliefs, was vastly different. It was an intellectual struggle, prosecuted through debates he held across the length and breadth of India. As we've now come to expect with the ancient Indians, there's much uncertainty and dispute about our man's early life. According to some religious biographies, written in verse several hundred years later, Shankara's long childless parents had prayed to Shiva, the Hindu deity, at a nearby temple. Shiva, appearing to them in a dream, presented a choice. They could have a son who was a brilliant philosopher, all-knowing and virtuous, but short-lived, or one who would live long, but without any special virtue or greatness. They opted for the smart kid, whom they named Shankara, another name for Shiva. As promised, he turned out to be a child prodigy, mastering the 4 Vedas, the oldest Hindu scriptures, by the age of 8, and adding his own written commentaries by the age of 16. But his brilliance quickly proved a double-edged thing for his mother. His father had died when he was very young, and Shankara, as a good son, was expected to provide for his mother. Instead, at the age of 5, some say, while others say 8, he declared his desire to become a sannyasi, an ascetic, wandering monk. Shankaracharya's precocious choice of sannyas was a scandal. He was skipping over the usual stages of a Hindu man's life: student, householder, hermit, and then only finally religious wanderer. But he prevailed on his widowed mother. The poor woman seems to have been faced with quite a few hard choices in life, and so off he went, establishing temples and mutts across the length of India at the 4 cardinal geographic points of the subcontinent: Badrinath in the north, Puri in the east, Dwarka in the west, and here at Sringeri in the south. And they continue to exist, their head priests often in rivalry with one another. His teachings gained many devoted followers, and have many still today. In fact, they're all around me, coming here to pilgrimage at the Sringeri Mutt and temple. The earliest ideas about what later came to be known as Hinduism are found in the Vedas, and they were developed by the Upanishads, dating from 2,500 years ago. These Sanskrit writings, known as the Vedanta, or the end of the Vedas, began to answer some of the eternal questions that had been posed in the Vedas. Where do we come from? Why are we here? And where do we go? In the Upanishads, we find ideas of reincarnation and of how individual action in this life can shape our chances in the next one. Shankaracharya immersed himself in these texts, drawing them together into an intellectual system. Janardhan Ganeri is professor of philosophy at New York University.
Shankara's ambition was to provide a unified, single reading of the great plurality and diversity of the Hindu scriptures. So he wrote commentaries on almost all of the key Hindu scriptures that formed the canon, and attempted to provide them with a single interpretation, which for him was a form of monism. That is to say, he thought there was just one real entity, the name of which is Brahman, the fundamental grounding principle of the universe, and that everything else, all the apparent distinctions and differences in the world, including differences between different individual selves, are illusory.
Shankara's monism was crucially different from monotheism. Unlike the jealous paternal god of the Abrahamic faiths, and unlike, too, the superhuman personal gods of the Vedic pantheon, Shankara's Brahman was without positive attributes, a god or all-pervading substance without qualities. You cross over a bridge and climb a hill to get to the Sringeri Mutt, the monastery established by Sankaracharya. Its modern incarnation is somewhat different from when it was founded in the 8th century, and so it would seem are some of the practices of the present-day monks, who are maybe a little forgetful of Shankaracharya's original views.
Shankara believed that there was something more valuable in the Vedas, the ancient scriptures, than mere ritual injunctions. For instance, the recitation of mantras, word sounds whose repetition was supposed to up one's karmic investment fund, and so to improve chances of escape from the cycle of birth and death. For Shankaracharya, that was a misunderstanding of the individual spirit's path to liberation. To him, the Vedas, and especially the later Upanishads, contained knowledge, jnan, which revealed the essential unity of man and the cosmos. So Vedic Hinduism had to be newly formulated. Its obsession with rituals must be replaced by asceticism, celibacy, and intellectual rigor. Instead of mantras, he prescribed, therefore, meditative reflection, through which each individual could come to recognize the identity between his or her own essence and Brahman, universal spirit. Once we grasp that oneness with the eternal, we attain moksha.
Moksha, release from the cycle of birth and death. Shankaracharya's doctrine came to be known as Advaita Vedanta, which crystallized existing beliefs into a new religious philosophy. His efforts to capture the oneness of the universe produced beautiful and sometimes enigmatic sentences.
I am neither earth, nor water, nor fire, nor air, nor sense organ, nor the aggregate of all these. For all these are transient. I am neither above nor below, neither inside nor outside, neither middle nor across, neither the east nor west. For I am indivisible, one by nature, and all-pervading like space.
But Shankara was also a masterful popularizer of his difficult teachings, composing devotional songs and hymns that are widely sung even today. This is Bhaja Govindam, in praise of Krishna, by the celebrated Carnatic vocalist M.S. Subbalakshmi.
Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja.
The version of Hinduism Shankara propagated gained popularity, but there are aspects of it not all Hindus would share or even recognize. Wendy Doniger, professor of the history of religions at the University of Chicago.
Shankara's there. Everybody knows about him. Some people use him as their own guide to their own thinking about the meaning of life. And those people say that's what Hinduism really is, but it's really not true. It's what some of Hinduism is. The trouble is that one branch of Hinduism, which includes the Shankara tradition, the philosophical tradition, was very attractive to the British when they came to India and they began the British Raj. They liked that it was a philosophical tradition. They could come to terms with that. The rest of Hinduism, which is to say most of Hinduism, with the gods with many arms and goddesses that drink warm blood, the British didn't really like that part of Hinduism. So the Hindus who worked with the British, which is to say quite a lot of people, they became ashamed of that part of their own religion.
It was Hindu revivalists and nationalists who at the end of the 19th and in the 20th century embraced Shankara's monism as Hinduism's muscular response to the monotheistic religions of Christianity and Islam. So proselytizers like Vivekananda, whom we'll hear about later in this series, invoked Shankara's ideas and argued for the creation of schools to promote Advaita Vedanta and to foster national self-pride. The present-day Shankaracharyas may be the nearest thing Hinduism has to a pope or papacy. But Hinduism itself remains as it was when Shankara lived, multiple in form, bubbling with internal arguments, and accepting of different forms of belief. There's no single defining text or interpreter. What there are mesmerizing questions, puzzles, daybreak doubts about the nature of our perceptions, the limits of our self, the relationship between that self and the unceasing flow of time.
पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया भैरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवोद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राणिर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतम् मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वे